Hey everybody, welcome to our second official installment of Two Sides, Discussions That Matter, where Professor Tim Matowitz and myself, Jeffrey Herr, try to voice our beliefs and opinions with a central idea to try to find some common ground between our beliefs that might be very different. Now, our two sides discussion today that we would have liked to have shown you on the background if you saw the flyer is a question. Our essential question today: are college faculty too liberal? Kind of a hot button topic, wouldn't you say, Tim?
I would say so. Relevant for sure.
Yeah. Before we get into it, I will say a small introduction about myself, and then I'll let Tim introduce himself as well. So I'm Dr. Jeffrey Herr, Professor of Education, Department Chair for Teacher Education here on South Campus. I teach the future teachers out there, so if anybody is thinking about going that career path, come see me at some point after this. We've got big things going on in the Education Department. We are about to start in 1 year from now a Bachelor's of Science with Education as the discipline, as the focus. So you could get a 4-year degree at TCC South and become a teacher for about $10,000, Tim.
Not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal, considering my oldest son is a freshman at Tarleton, Stephenville, and his freshman year will cost me $22,000. That's just 1 year.
Ouch.
Yep. And that's a state-funded school.
Wow.
It's not a private school.
What a difference.
Yeah, $10,000 here at TCC. So that's who I am. I've been here about 10 years. I'll be representing more of the left or perhaps liberal side of this discussion. Tim, what about you?
Well, I am Professor Matowitz, or Instructor Matowitz. I'm in the speech department, and I teach public speaking and intro to speech, business and professional communication. I've been here for about 12 years, 8 of those full-time, and I'm here to represent the opposite side of this debate with my esteemed colleague, Dr. Herr, and happy to do it. So,
Tim mentioned debate. I hesitate to call them debates more than discussions. Debates have winners and losers, and I don't think that's what we're going to be doing.
Civil dialogue.
I think civil dialogue. I think there's too much that puts that general population puts stock into what's called debate. And I believe if we had more conversations and discussions that were civil and constructive, debates to me seem too derisive and too conflicting. I don't know.
Yeah, debate is typically scored and determines winners and losers. I have a lot of my students who are evaluating me on the criteria that I use to evaluate them in class. I thought it would be a good opportunity to turn the tables, and then I can get some pretty good feedback to see how I did. So they'll be keeping an eye on me, but that's it. So civil dialogue on. Yeah,
I think we'll probably talk back and forth until about 3 p.m. and then allow for you all to ask us questions or state any comments or concerns that you have about what's been talked about in the next 40 some odd minutes. So let me reset. Here's the question again. Are college faculty too liberal? Tim, I guess I'll just pose it to you.
Sure. I think the answer to that question is an undeniable yes. But we have to look a little deeper into that question. So I would actually assert that in many ways, despite the fact that many college faculty may vote for Democrats, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're liberal. I think there are a lot of illiberal elements to instructors and professors who identify as being on the left. I think they've gone much further than that, and in many cases are actually probably correctly identified as Marxist more than Democrats or liberal or traditional leftists. And I think the data bears that out. You have Harvard University comes in somewhere around 80% liberal. I think that's probably a conservative estimate, no pun intended. There are many other studies out there. One from the National Institute of Scholars, or National Association of Scholars, rather. Mitchell Lambert did this in 2018 and found that 51 of the top 60 schools, as rated by U.S. News and Report, were either nil with conservative instructors or a number so low that it was negligible. And so that about 79% of those 51 colleges came in with that ranking. So, but regardless, I'm much less concerned with that. To be honest with you, it really wouldn't matter to me if we had college faculty who were 100% on the left or 100% on the right. As long as those political views aren't being baked into the lessons and then pushed onto the students in a type of indoctrination ritual, it really doesn't matter to me how they vote. Either way would be fine.
That's the common ground. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I see myself
Thanks for coming.
as, I guess, I don't refer to myself as a liberal. I might say progressive. Sometimes I might say leftist. I don't know that I'm a Marxist. I've read some Marx. I don't agree with everything Marx says. But for the time period, I think he made some excellent points about the worker. But I don't want to get into the weeds there. I looked at a study, well today I used Copilot for my study. I must say I use AI generation. I have to use that disclaimer because I make my students do that.
Yeah.
So I saw a study where Harvard is very, very much liberal, but it was on the edge of somewhere around 63%. And maybe overall conservatives, you say very low numbers, could be as low as below 10%. But I don't know if it goes below 1%. But this was just from Copilot. I like to think that liberalism in education is actually really important. Not in a way where you espouse or you try to put across liberal political viewpoints to your students in your classroom. I'm talking about liberalism in education as a foundation for democratic values. And when I say democratic values, I mean tolerance, cooperation, critical thinking, and civic engagement. I think if we as faculty promote those values of democracy, choice and voice, tolerance, cooperation, civic engagement, I think, and that allows for students to have a freedom and growth to explore on their own, to reflect on their own, to be open to all kinds of ideas. I think that in that sense, I view liberalism as something that all faculty should, at least to some regard, espouse to be.
I agree. And I think we should establish first the definitionally speaking here. I think what you're talking about is classic liberalism as a philosophy.
Yes.
John Locke and John Stuart Mill,
Yeah.
some of the great Enlightenment thinkers,
Sure.
versus actual political liberalism, as in how you choose to vote.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we differentiate
Yeah.
the two. That's what I want to do here too.
Yeah. Versus Marxism, which would be way on the far end
Sure.
of that scale,
Sure.
perhaps. Yeah.
So, my question: do you identify, Tim, as politically a conservative or libertarian? Where do you stand?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to break the rules here because I try to keep this a secret from my students throughout the semester. But I would say that I would identify as a conservative.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've known you for several years, and I would agree. That's probably where I would, if I were to attach labels, which I don't like doing.
Yeah, I understand.
But I would conservative. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Would the common conservative that's out in the world today, whatever that looks like, and you just go on social media and you can tell what they look like, all right? Liberals for that matter too.
Sure.
Would the common conservative see you, know your profession, and consider you one of them?
Yes, if we were to discuss views. No, if they were to sit in it on a class. Because I really do my best.
Expound on that a little bit.
I think a lot of my students can attest to this. I'm here to teach speech. And it doesn't have anything to do with what my philosophical view is, or I mean, to some degree, but not political philosophy. And it makes no difference to me how anybody votes. And I really genuinely and sincerely do my best to try and keep my own opinions concealed and only teach speech. Now, I know that it's not possible to do that 100%, and no one can be purely objective, as we know. But that would probably be my top aim, is to keep that concealed. So if someone were to have a conversation with me, then I think it would be evident to them right away that, okay, clearly he's conservative. I could tell you my views on some positions. Although there are some moonshots in there. Some of them would really surprise you. But for sure, however, if they sat in on a class, my goal is that they would leave that class scratching their head, having no idea where I would come down politically, how I would vote, etc.
Yeah. And honestly, that last statement, I agree with you. I think that's the way it should probably be. Do I noticeably lean left in my classroom? I don't know if it's noticeable, but some students would tell you that they're not able to tell, and I'm sure some would say that he's a liberal.
Well, I could tell you that just from my personal experience, simply not pushing some of the more progressive, far-left views in class is enough to get you critiqued as a right-wing crazy person. Just the fact that you're
By
not...
students.
By students, yes. Just the fact that you're not pushing what they've come to expect. And I think this says a lot about where many faculty are at, both in colleges as well as K through 12. That alone is enough for them to determine that, well, he doesn't have these far left views, he's not pushing critical race theory, he's not talking about some of the more radical elements of modern feminism, and those aren't baked into the lessons. Therefore, he is clearly a crazy right-wing person. And I've had that experience. And so simply not going along with that program can get you labeled that way, and I think that's very telling about where faculty generally are, that we have students. I don't think you probably have that happen. I don't want to presume too much, but I wouldn't imagine that you've had students say, well, he's not pushing far right views. He's clearly a left-wing nut job.
Yeah, I don't have that. I want to go back to the first thing you said, is that the common conservative today would probably not see you as one of them until they did what? Talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My issue with that is, why is it assumed that, a teacher, K-12 even, in current times, or a college professor automatically is not a conservative? Is it because the numbers that you pointed out in the first part of your conversation today?
Yeah, it would be hard to articulate why they expect that. I think there is a general expectation because that is the perception, and I think that that is based on quite a bit of reality as the numbers bear out, et cetera. I mean, just to point to an artifact from the college here, I did a pedagogy training class just after COVID, maybe 2021, 2022. And I think it was for online certification or something like this. And the two people that they featured in there were Gloria Ladson Billings, who is the Queen Mother.
A fan of, by the way, me.
Okay,
Fan of.
fair enough. Is also the Queen Mother of critical race theory. Of course, now that's been changed to, they came up with some other term for the acronym, culturally relevant teaching. They left the acronym the same.
I do that. I have a class all about that, Tim.
So it wasn't a very clever move. I mean, she could have changed that altogether. And it doesn't take but one quick Google search of who this person is to see that she's got 5 decades worth of pushing these far left ideas in education. And then the other one was Zaretta Hammond, who, again, a quick Google search, and you can find a quote there where she identifies herself as an equity freedom fighter. And so I thought to myself, why is this baked into the pedagogy for faculty at the college? Shouldn't that also be neutral?
Yeah, but here's what these two professors are professors within a program at their institution. A program, like I teach in a program of teaching, where the students have to enroll, and they probably know a bit about that professor before they even get there. My guess is they're trying to take these gurus of CRT before they even, before the first class day. They mean to take these professors.
Yeah,
I would mean to take them.
I'm not sure why we would want to use those perspectives when we are training faculty, like broadly, just across the board. Everyone who goes through this program is going to receive training from these two who are clearly so far on the left, politically speaking.
Well, does Thomas Sowell, does he teach? Sowell?
I think he probably did when he did graduate work in the 50s.
I'm sure people took him for the same reasons of the ideas that he espouses, right? And rightfully so.
Perhaps, although he's in economics, so that's a little more.
I get it. Economics professors are probably lean more conservative, as they do.
I think you're less likely to get into the actual politics of it. It's more about the numbers and the stats and the figures and that sort of thing. So.
But if we name a conservative professor out there who's well known, I'm sure.
Such as?
Yeah, help me.
I couldn't tell you.
You can't tell me?
Yeah.
There's got to be some, right? We know there are.
Sure, there are.
If 10% of Harvard faculty are conservative, then there's some big names out there, right?
I would hope so, but I couldn't tell you any of them.
Well, whoever they are, there's probably some who teach in programs that students actually take those classes because they want to hear those viewpoints.
I would imagine
And
so.
I can get that. I get it. And so I just wonder, as you identify at least somewhat as conservative, if conservatives out there who are not in education would see you as being one of them. And I struggle to see that. I think that you're right. They would have to have a conversation with you directly.
For sure.
And even then, you really have to make a case for yourself.
Or spot me in a T-shirt or at the range or something like that. And then
You have to have a red hat on.
cat's out of the bag. Yeah, or with a red hat. I don't wear hats, actually. But.
Oh, well, I have to because, the sun.
Well, I'm trying not to because I don't want to end up losing everything else there.
Yeah. Well, I'm too far gone. I just try to protect the scalp.
Is it something you agree on?
Yeah, well, as we're trying, we agree on that, the common ground.
Yep. By the time I get to be your age, I expect to be the same.
Cuts.
I think we're
Cuts,
pretty close
Tim.
to the same age.
We're close, but I think I
just a pun.
got you beat by a few years.
Not many, not too many.
Yeah, a few years. Tim, I've asked you at least a couple of questions. Do you have some questions maybe for me?
Well, sure. I guess the big question would be is, do you, I take it that you don't think that college faculty are too liberal. And if you mean in the philosophical sense, we're talking about the Enlightenment theory, I think that's probably correct, though that would also apply to conservatives. I mean, the country was founded by people who did so as this being the big liberal experiment, and they themselves were largely conservatives. And so I think that today's conservatives wouldn't really even fit that mold of people who originally founded the country. But the question that I would have is, how do you know when the left goes too far? Because you could condense into thumbnails the basic political philosophies of each side. And I think you could say that for the right, it's more about order. So it's more rules, rigidity in society, that kind of thing, very broadly speaking. And with the left, it would be more chaos. And I don't mean the negative chaos. I mean things need to be changed, mix things up, let's evolve, let's move forward. That type of productive chaos. I don't mean that as a pejorative.
I think, I teach a class. One of the education classes that we have is a special populations class, which basically is a tolerance and a how to accommodate multicultures that exist in K-12 classrooms. And so naturally, issues of tolerance, issues of civic engagement, social responsibility, issues of cooperation are going to come up as it relates to various cultural identities, as we call them.
Yeah, I would disagree
And it
with
comes up as part of the curriculum.
Sure.
So within that, I've made the class my own as I've been at it for, a decade. So in that, I'm careful to have some sort of academic neutrality to maintain rigor. And what I mean is, in academic neutrality, if I highlight a leftist ideal in education, I will also try to balance it with a more center or right to make sure that we at least know that there are other viewpoints on this as well.
Sure.
And I think that's part of what all faculty should do. But I also think that, whether that's philosophical or political, that that's a part of liberalism that we all should embrace.
See, and that's where I would disagree. I think the whole notion of multiculturalism, it's antithetical to the country. We should be one culture, e pluribus unum, from many, one. And I think that, especially in education, when we start focusing on, well, these people look this way, and so that's a culture, and these people look this way, and that's a culture, I think that's a huge mistake. And I think that's where the left has gone too far. In other words, it's kind of easy to tell when the right goes too far because you get too much order and life becomes unbearable in society. However, the left kind of, when do you get to a point where you say, okay, well, things are good now, we're just going to maintain? And I think the nature of being on the left is such that you have this nonstop proclivity to we have to continue to evolve and continue to change. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think it's a mistake when you look at groups of people and you say, well, it's multicultural here. I think that shouldn't matter. Was there a time when that mattered? Absolutely, of course. But I feel in a lot of ways...
You don't think that time is now, though?
I don't think the time is now. I think that the left has gotten away from itself a bit and is kind of stuck in this, well, we're perpetually racist, we're perpetually doomed to be stuck in this mold, and I don't see the evidence out there for it. On the other hand, I see a lot of evidence for treating student body as multicultural, different. I mean, what does that even mean? Like, are we supposed to have different standards? Or of course we want to have tolerance and fairness. That's just a given. Like, we all learn about that in elementary school.
And this is where we disagree probably the most on this, being that I'm a teacher of a multicultural education class. But some questions come to mind. I mean, when I talk about cultures to my classroom, it's a pretty big umbrella. It's not just race, ethnicity, language differences, but we know that when I teach teachers to go into K-12 schools, there's going to be students who are in one classroom who are gifted, who are average learners, and who are special needs. And part of our multiculturalism is being able to differentiate your instruction to meet the needs of learners, but also those whose native language is not English, meeting their needs. That's multiculturalism too, Tim, but chances are you probably agree with me that we should accommodate the needs of those learners too.
Well, I agree, but I don't think it's about the speed at which people learn for most faculty who are on the left, or the fact that we have immigrants who are learning English and need some extra attention in that way. I think the problem is that they view it by identity. And they look at identity groups and they go, well, this is one culture and that's a culture, and you're oppressed and you're privileged, and so that shapes their approach more than the speed of learning or whether or not somebody is up to speed on English yet because they're a new arrival. And I think it's a better approach if we treated everyone as though we are all part of the same culture. So those differences should be irrelevant. It shouldn't matter what we look like. It shouldn't matter, what part of town we came from, how much money our parents make, those sorts of things.
But wouldn't that mean everybody's at the same starting line? And we're really not, are we?
Well, the idea is to treat them as though they're at the same starting line when they arrive here.
I love the concept.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's reality.
Well, if it's not reality, how do you cure that? Because then you get into the identity politics of treating people differently based on what they look like.
Well, my answer would be a
anything.
left-leaning cure, and yours would be more of a right-leaning cure, I guess.
Well, I would maintain the neutral. So I don't think I would approach it as, like when I have students in the class, of course I can tell when I have students who are new to the country and they're struggling to learn English and that kind of thing. And of course it's important to give extra attention to those students. And to treat them with a little special handling, because it's obvious that they're a little further behind. But I don't make any determinations based on what somebody looks like. These folks are white, so they're all privileged, and these are not white folks, and so they're clearly oppressed to some degree, and so I have to change things up as I approach them. As I mentioned in the last debate that we had, economics might be the one exception. If I have students it can be pretty clear once you get to know them a little bit. Perhaps they came from a background where they didn't have many advantages, they didn't have much money, and they're struggling in that way. Do I tend to give them more attention? Yes, but they come in all colors and shapes and sizes.
That's accommodations for SES, socioeconomic status.
Yeah,
I applaud you.
yeah, thank you. But that has nothing to do with their actual identity, because someone could look like, they could have my complexion and come from absolute destitute poverty.
Sure.
And someone could have a darker complexion than me and have had many more advantages than I've had in life.
There are always
I have
outliers.
no way to tell.
There's always outliers to the norm.
I don't know that those are outliers or that there is a norm. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I mean, is there today? Is there a norm? Should we have that expectation that by and large, based on identity, we should have these presumptions
Well, I mean,
baked in?
if you're asking someone who's more of a leftist and a liberal, I would say the norm are those who I consider to be more of the privilege in our society. So I think that there are some people who have privilege. We're born into privilege, have privilege for whatever reason that other people do not. Now, we can go into all that, but that's,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I do believe that.
We all have privileges. I have privileges that you didn't have, and students have privileges and talents and abilities that I don't have, and vice versa. And there's just no way to tell by looking at somebody. You know, when I came here, I think we had a discussion when I became full-time, I first got to know you, because of my background and where I went to school, that I must have come from a more privileged background. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And I don't mean to demean you in any way. But it would surprise you to know that I was born in a home that didn't have plumbing.
It did surprise me, and you told me this. And here's what also surprised me about your upbringing, is your upbringing was in upstate New York, right?
That's
Upstate?
right. All right.
But and this was a long time ago, you told me this, you had never visited, maybe you have by now, you'd never visited New York City.
Never been. Nope.
And you're a New Yorker.
That's right.
That baffles me.
I have no desire.
As a person who's like, that's my favorite city in the entire world.
You would find that commonplace in upstate New York. Most people who are born and raised in upstate New York, we have no desire to go to New York City. We don't care about it. I don't know why. It's a strange phenomenon. I admit it. I can't explain why. It's just something we just don't care about. Maybe because of the proximity. It's so close. It's like no big deal. I think it has more to do with attitudes that people have there, because there's a state income tax. And it's fairly well known that those state income taxes go pretty much directly to New York City because they're overrepresented by population and density. And when that happens, that means you don't get the benefit of state taxes in your area, so your local taxes become more expensive. And then, I mean, it's a beautiful area, but is really
now, is that up in the
down.
Adirondacks? Because I've been up that way, and that's really pretty.
I'm a little more west of there in the
Okay.
Finger Lakes region.
Okay,
where
probably
it's
still
even
really,
prettier in
probably
the
still
autumn.
really, really nice.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful, but it's just overlooked. It's flyover country. And I think mostly because of the density of New York City, the resources tend to all go there. And then people get overlooked where I am, and they go, that city takes all the money. And this kind of attitudes are...
Enough of the niceties now, Tim. All right. All right. Back to this. Liberal faculty, too liberal. I don't know. If percentages, when you threw out those numbers, and I don't dispute them in greatly, maybe here and there.
Sure.
But yes, numbers of faculty that identify as liberal much higher than those who identify as conservative or libertarian or nothing at all.
Yep.
Right? And so, but my question in these surveys that are taken is, when they're asking faculty, are you liberal? I think that they probably are thinking of liberalism. And the way to go about teaching is to uphold democratic values. I think in these surveys, they're actually, you might agree with the liberalist part of education, as you've talked about already,
I do.
and I think in these surveys, that's what's being asked probably.
Yeah, perhaps.
No,
they're
I
not
don't-
clean surveys. It's hard to tell. You're
I mean,
right.
we know Gloria Ladson-Billings and Bell Hooks, RIP, by the way. But we know that these people espoused a leftist ideology in their classroom. But I think mostly professors who identify as liberal are academically neutral, and they espouse rigor in their classroom through experimentation, cooperation, tolerance, all of those things that democracy values.
I think there's
I
another
think that's
metric.
probably it.
We could look at another metric here, and
Okay.
that would be the general outcomes. So when we look on college campuses, especially in the last few years, what do we see from students? Do they appear to be radicalized as being on the right or radicalized being on the left. Now, we have many of the major universities in the country who are having a really hard time upholding the principle of free speech, which is astonishing to me, given that that is probably the central plank of classical
We're
liberalism.
about to get into some common ground again here, Tim.
Good. And so what I see are the products of these universities, and they're protesting things in such a way that, and I'm all about protest. Obviously, anybody who has my class knows that the First Amendment is central.
Part of liberal education, I think, that exists.
Of course. But some of the more radical ideas that are being espoused and some of the riotous demonstrations and the way that they come down on issues, for example, I know that a real hot button issue for the last couple of years, and of course still is today, is what's going on in the Palestine area with Israel and the October 7th attacks, which seem to preempt this most recent excursion
Or the
fighting.
taking over of land in 1967.
Yeah, it depends on your starting point. You're right, for sure. But
A leftist would go
think
back to that date.
The current movement, or the current, what would you say, the unsettled behavior and the more riotous behavior that we see, that seems to have been initiated by October 7th. Now, obviously,
Okay,
you're right.
I mean,
you could pick any number of starting points going back
I want to
a
let you
long
go. I'm not
way.
going to dispute you here.
But I think when you look at, so what I'm saying is that despite the fact that, if you try to survey college professors on where they come down, what does that mean? Does that mean they're registered to vote one way or the other? Or does that mean that they're like philosophically classical liberals? But I think if you look at the products, if you look at what's going on college campuses, you look at the way that free speech is being treated, you look at some of the demands for compelled speech and some of the restrictions that are placed on speech, it's absolutely absurd. John Stuart Mill is no doubt spinning in his grave like a pinwheel over this stuff. And that is, probably one of the main planks of philosophical classical liberalism.
Yeah.
Who cared very much about diversity of thought and didn't seem to say a word on liberty anyway about diversity of immutable characteristics.
That's some common ground for us, that free speech needs to be absolute.
That should be our next discussion.
Maybe it will be. Yeah. And I feel the same way. But to honor the amazing democratic avenues that free speech gives us, I think that takes a liberal mindset of learning and wanting to explore. I think that goes hand in hand with liberalism.
Doesn't seem to be playing out in the students, though, does it?
Tell me more.
And the policies. Well, at Harvard, where they were restricting free speech, Columbia, take any of the major universities.
Yeah.
And so, how is it that we have administrative bodies in these universities that are now wanting to restrict free speech? That's astonishing to me. And so you don't get that net result without a large body of people who are skewed way to the left, both in the administration and in the faculty. Again, to the point that I made here about some of the pedagogy that I went through in, I think, 2021, where we were looking at Miss Ladson-Billings and Zaretta Hammond, and I was just looking at that going,
Paulo Freire.
Paulo Freire, exactly. Why is a Brazilian Marxist the patron saint of education in
I
America?
love that guy. Yeah,
Why him?
Because I see.
So we have a Marxist. We agree on
I
that.
see him
He's
as
a
fighting
Marxist.
for the oppressed, which
so,
I like.
So we agree that we have a Marxist as a central figure.
Paulo would not say that he's a full-blown Marxist, I don't think. Now, his ideals may...
I think he would. I think his background would
we can't
bear
ask
that
him
out
anymore,
too.
but he's well-read in Marx, for sure. But he wouldn't see himself as a full-blown Marxist. He's definitely a socialist, far to the left of Bernie, but I don't know that he would be a Marxist, but that's not our conversation here.
Fair enough.
Let's talk, we've talked a bit about Harvard and Columbia and NYU and those kind of faculty, which are abstract to the mind of these people that are before us, perhaps. Let's talk about right here on TCC South Campus.
Yeah.
Are faculty too liberal here at TCC, or just TCC in general as a district?
I think in some areas, yes. It depends on the subject. And you pointed this out, or we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
If you went into the economics department, probably would find a little more conservative leaning.
I think you're right.
I think if you went into the English department or psychology or philosophy, you would find they would skew very far to the left. And so it would kind of depend on the department. And that's not a rule. It doesn't mean
I wouldn't
that
say very far, but I would say
100%.
to the left.
Yeah, I would say very far to the left. I
Yes.
mean, I couldn't get a consensus from the philosophy department to support the Chicago Statement on free speech, which we spent a lot of time
Yeah,
discussing.
and you asked
That
Dr.
is
Bird.
astonishing to me that you have a Department of Philosophy unwilling to come forward and support free speech. I'm sorry, we can't get a consensus. We can't do it. Are you kidding me? How much more illiberal could we get than that? So in that way, they're not liberal at all.
But
There's nothing liberal about that position.
for you to be dismayed at the response that you got is fine. But I don't know that that attaches the faculty as being very far to the left just because they didn't.
Well, fair enough, but that is a reflection of where they come down when you get that
Yeah.
kind of response that
Yeah.
we don't have a consensus in the philosophy. That's a no-brainer for philosophy, by the way, to support free speech. You don't even have to pause to think
Yeah.
about that. Do you
And I don't-
support free speech?
yeah.
Of course we do. We're the philosophy department. What do you think?
I don't know if you should take, I think you're reading too much into this one.
How so?
I think that the philosophy professors that I know here, at least on this campus,
Well, certainly, and I do too.
They,
They're not all that way.
they promote free speech. I think there was something else within the Chicago statement that maybe didn't sit with them. And I don't know what it was. I don't know because I don't
I
remember
can't
the Chicago
imagine.
statement.
I can't imagine what it would
What
be.
it is.
It was a very articulate statement, very classically liberal, framed in that context. And
Not to switch gears too much, but
No, go
getting us back. On Monday and Tuesday mornings, I'm out in the Commons area. I have an event called the Thought Exchange, where passersby who want to talk for 3 minutes, I try to model an engaging, constructive conversation with them. And I bring up a hot button topic every time. It's a claim. It's never a question. It's a claim. And so leading up to this event, I started asking, I gave the claim that TCC faculty are too liberal. Sometimes students, I would have to explain what liberal means. I would explain it in a political sense, where they espouse their views in class.
Sure.
I say it that way. Overwhelming, I interviewed probably 20 students and faculty. Overwhelmingly, and I'm saying 18 of 20, said that they don't notice any big liberalism ideology or agenda here at TCC.
I think that's great news. And I would
Yeah.
largely agree. As I've gotten to know people here in different departments, I would say if you took all of the colleges and universities in the state of Texas and said, okay, which ones are more in the middle, which ones are more to the left, which ones are more to the right, I think you would find that this campus would be very much to the center. I mean, we're a two-year school, and people who go here are just workaday, blue-collar people of all different backgrounds. And I don't think, does it probably skew a little to the left here? I think so, but I don't think it's excessive here. I think we have a, relatively speaking, a pretty
I think we
good
can
balance.
agree on that. Does it matter that the city in which the college or university is located leans more liberal or conservative? Fort Worth's kind of, I don't know, right in that purple ground, isn't it? Of being
I think so.
left and right. Does that? I mean, that's kind of a centrist community, or
I think so. I think people are probably generally more conservative in this area. Of course, I believe we still have a Democratic mayor here, and
Maddie Parker? I guess she is. Maddie Parker, Democrat.
but that wouldn't make me feel like it skews left. I would say, if anything, that's a little bit of balance. Which, regardless, and I think we'll agree here too. We don't want homogenous political viewpoints in any organ or
No,
body
we
of
don't.
government. It's important that you value and cherish the loyal opposition.
Yeah.
And so
I
we-
want the
we-
common ground blinker to go up above us right here. And
We very much need, to have that, because otherwise one side or the other is going to run away with things, and that's perhaps where some of the bigger universities have run into
Heterogeneity of ideas is where it's at for me as well,
problems. Yeah.
for sure. Tim, we're right at about 3 o'clock. Final thoughts, or do we want to let the audience pose some thoughts
I
and
think we can
questions?
take questions, comments, or concerns.
You've been thinking, you've been sitting quietly. We urge you now to pose questions to both of us or give comments and concerns. You can pinpoint who you want to answer the question, one or the other, or both of us, Or maybe you've just got some things you want to say that are on your mind about faculty being too liberal or not. What are your thoughts? That's Joshua.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. That's right.
He comes to the thought exchange.
Does he?
He does. He's gone
He's a
3
pretty
times.
good student in my class too.
Wednesday. Those Tuesdays, I think.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you guys, what are y'all's definition of liberal again? I want to get that clear first before I ask my question.
Well, I think we broke it into categories. So you have the philosophical view of, classical liberalism, which I think we have, absolute agreement on that philosophy.
I think you're right.
I don't think we disagree much on that. And then you have political liberalism, which means I tend to vote for Democrats to whatever degree. I could be, just a standard liberal, politically speaking, or really far to the left. And then the last group, which we didn't really touch on too much, would be actual Marxists or socialists, which be on the furthest end of that political spectrum. So,
I lean more toward that far end, Joshua. When I vote, I'm not real thrilled with Democrats. I would never vote for a Republican. Even though I try to keep, in my classroom, I try to keep a very open mind.
Sure.
But I'm pretty far left. So if you wanted to know that, I don't mind saying.
You'd look good in a red hat.
I have a red hat, but unfortunately it doesn't have those white letters across it. Thanks, Joshua, for your question. Have one over here. Dr. Herr or Jeff?
What time did you say the stock exchange was again? And what days?
I'm having a hard time hearing him, Tim.
He wanted to know was it the thought exchange that you
Oh, the
mentioned?
thought exchange. I just go out into the common areas on Monday, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, and people who are going to their 9:30 class, if you say good morning to me, but you just look away, I don't try to call you over. But if you look twice, that's an invitation for me to go, hey, do you mind having a really meaningful conversation with me for 3 minutes, or do you have to rush off to class? And sometimes they'll say I'm in a big hurry, and I'll go, hey, maybe next time. And sometimes they go, hey, I want to talk right now. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. And so I try to go out between 9 and 9:30, and then again at 10:50 or 10:45 when that 10:50 class ends, before the 11 o'clock class. So I try to go out Monday, Tuesday mornings, right out in the commons area between the library and the academic buildings. I try to stay in the shade too, especially this time of the year, because I don't have a hat on. Thank you. I have a different topic every time. It's always something controversial, though. So
I'm going to check that out myself.
Please, faculty come by. Yeah, I'm glad to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I don't go to the class. I'm just sitting with her. But the gentleman on the right, he said that we shouldn't see cultures as so differently. Do you not fear that that would make us all like one big blob, or like do you not see that we should, or do you not feel like we should value that? Or, because you also said that, of course, you see other students and you give assistance where it's needed, but I don't know.
I guess I would answer you this way. My main concern is that we all come together as Americans. And for that reason, that's why it doesn't matter to me whatever someone's immutable characteristics are, how they pee, who they love, how they identify. It makes no difference to me. The main thing ought to be that we put all that aside and say, you know what, we are all equally Americans first. And if you make that important, I think that it helps immensely more than if you focus on those other things.
I think it gets so hard to separate, though, to say I'm going to go into public as being American and not as a gay American or a female American or whatever the identity may be.
Very dangerous to do that because now we're identifying in subgroups.
I think it's hard to separate as a human being.
I don't think so. I think if we're all Americans and then that we have that view that, hey, everybody has the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and these things don't matter. You are welcome to do as you please, and I encourage you to do so, but they will make no difference to me in the way that I view you, how I treat you, the amount of respect that I give you. It doesn't matter. And I think that both approaches are imperfect, but if we place that as the top priority, is saying, look, let's emphasize that we're all Americans, we're all in this together.
Yeah. I like the last part you said about respect for all.
Of course.
I mean, and
absolutely.
But Yeah, but there's some disagreement that we have in there. Joshua again.
So you said that we should all come together as Americans, right?
Yes.
How do you pose that to people who don't want to identify as Americans because they're unhappy with the state of America and the people who, I guess, make the decisions in America?
The First Amendment. I would encourage them to protest. I would encourage them to lobby their congressmen, their representatives, their senators. That's the real way to solve things. So, we look around today and you can see that there's a lot of unrest in the country. There's rioting and people, and I understand that people are unhappy about things. The way to resolve that is not to attack law enforcement or to riot. The way to address that effectively is to lobby your representatives and say, hey, we're not happy with this. And if you don't address this for us, whatever side you're on, even if they're on the left, I encourage them to do this. If they're not happy about it and they happen to be the majority of voices, then that's what ought to win the day. But that's the avenue to do it. And that's part of what being an American is using the First Amendment, using your free speech, getting out there, protesting, and lobbying your congressman for change. So,
Love that question, by the way.
Excellent.
And I like the answer, but I struggle. Tim, my question is through legislative action the only way to make change? I mean, free speech allows us to go out and protest.
Absolutely.
Go out and get your legislators' attention. Is that the only way to change something beneficially, according to you?
No, I mean, there are other elements. I guess I would have to concede to you that I also agree with civil disobedience to a degree. Does that cross the threshold into assaulting federal officers and, starting fires and rioting and that sort of thing? No. But at the same time, if there is a law that is unjust, or there is some standard in society then that is unjust, then no one has any obligation to obey that unjust rule or that unjust law. And for that reason, I would encourage, a reasonable amount of civil disobedience.
Tim, I like that.
Yep.
I like that about you now.
Absolutely. I'm a bit of a rebel on the right.
I'm just finding this out. Yeah. Had a question back there. Yes, sir.
Why do you think that we have to connect identity so much to who we are? Like you were saying, gay American or just a woman American. Since a lot of identity politics is a very volatile thing, and connecting it to who we are as a people is very much a separated thing, and can lead to separation.
And so your question in there is, remind me again.
Why would identity as an individual be so important to that when it comes to something?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, going back to what I said earlier, I do believe that there are members of our society who are more privileged than others. And some of the non-privileged ones have identities different from the privileged. And I think it's important to offer tolerance, to offer accommodations to help bring up those who are not of the privilege, whether that's race, ethnicity, language, ability, disability, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, to bring them closer to wherever the privileged are. That's my belief. And so it's important to me to understand identities that are different from what I perceive to be my own.
Sounds like an inherent quality of that is that some identity that a person has an inherent how much it gives or takes away from a person, to where simply the displaying of a different sexual orientation or how somebody presents himself with a political sense could almost change their status within society.
Yeah. Well, as you pointed out, it's a very volatile topic, right? For sure. Do I, as a teacher of teachers, do I espouse that my future teachers should hang a pride flag in their classroom, in their K-12 classroom? I don't recommend it in the state of Texas. It gets you fired. In this state, it's a volatile thing. But do I recommend that my future teachers be very thoughtful and respectful and accommodating to those students who are LGBTQ, who are being bullied in their school? Absolutely. So it's a real volatile situation. How far should my future teachers go in being accepting? That's why I think you have a great question.
Could I add just one thing to that?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to also point out that, the pursuit of equity or equal outcomes, where we look at identity groups and we say, well, this group and that group, we've got to make things fair in some way. We have to change this. We have to focus on those things. I would assert to you this for your consideration. There's only one way that it's even possible for all of us to be equal, and that would be through equal opportunity. We can make opportunity equal for everyone, and we ought to. But if we start focusing on, well, this group and that group, that's when the exercise starts to go off the rails. That's my view of it. I think equality of opportunity is what we can make that real. We can accomplish that. And I think I truly believe that's the only plane that we will ever be able to
I see that as,
on.
I admire it, but I see it as idealistic. But
I'm a
yes.
bit of an idealist sometimes.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
according to me. There was another hand up there. Joshua again.
I'll let everyone go. Everyone.
No, please. I mean, I don't see a bunch of hands going up.
I was just going to say, don't you think it's, just in general, a bit idealistic for people to not kind of attach a group to themselves? Like, even if you don't do it yourself, I feel like people tend to eventually attach a group to themselves. Even
That
if
may
it's
be for
not,
you.
like you said, some groups are underprivileged in some ways, and you can admit like they get discriminated against in some areas. And for that reason, they might attach a label to themselves. So I just feel like it's inevitable in this society because there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of prejudice that goes on. So I just think I'm not saying that government should do it, but I feel like eventually people are going to attach a label to themselves.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge the fact that our black folks, do they tend to make up a lot of the areas where poor folks are, or where there's a lot of crime, or where it's very difficult to get a good education or get out of there? Absolutely. I just don't think that the answer is the equity approach where we start looking at group identity. I think the way out of that is to say we have to make sure there are equal opportunities in all of those communities for everyone, and then the rest of the work is kind of up to us, isn't it?
How does equal opportunity not turn into something that I like a little bit, socialism? How does equal opportunity not turn into that?
I'm not sure I understand how.
I don't know either.
mean.
I'm just spitballing here.
Let's defer. I think
Yeah,
Josh had
yeah.
another question there.
Ideally, government-funded, funds should be used to help these groups, but we know that that's not the way that they get used. They often get lost in donations to other people or just other things. They don't get put to the right causes. So I just think it's probably just a fundamental problem with the way the system's set up. Like it's too easy for people to be corrupt. And it's just corruption is too rampant in the government scene in both sides.
Too much, are you saying corruption as in too much greed?
Greed is part of it.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but
Well, we have a broken system. I mean, we could have another discussion on that, but I'm
Yeah.
afraid we would probably agree on everything there. And so, would it be, should it be a priority to try to direct resources if you're in the federal government toward areas where there are pockets of people where you could say, well, look, there are a lot of folks who are of this identity or that identity that could use some extra help? Absolutely. Just to underscore a point here that I think we'll agree on that speaks to the brokenness of the system. We have sent so much money to Ukraine in the last several years. We're way past this point, by the way. We reached this 2 years ago. The Freedom Tower, which was erected in New York City at the site of the World Trade Center after it was collapsed, I believe it was about, you can check me on this, I think it was about $3.9 billion. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a glorious tower. We could have put one of those in the capital of every state of this country and had money left over for the money that we shipped off to Ukraine. So why is that? Not that we should overlook that, not that we shouldn't care about Ukraine, but I'm just not sure why, being $38 trillion in debt as a nation, we would say, well, yeah, there's South Fort Worth, but gosh, we got to send some more money to Ukraine, or send some, not even just Ukraine, anywhere else. I wish that we would take those resources and focus them here. It'd give me a fraction of that money. You know what I could do in South Fort Worth with just a few million of the billions of dollars, hundreds of billions that have flown out the door and gone to Ukraine. I could make a huge difference here. Just give me a fraction of that. It's just not that hard to do, and it speaks to the corruption of both parties, broken system, and ineffectual government, which I think we would agree on.
Yeah, a lot of it. Oh, Harold Jackson, faculty, accounting, TCC South.
Just a quick question. So you mentioned Ukraine. So if the United States does not help Ukraine, or Russia takes over the eastern bloc, Russia becomes a superpower again. Russia becomes a danger to us. So that's the justification behind doing it. I mean, it's not as simple as, well, take some funds.
You probably agree with that reason.
Ukraine.
Not so much.
No.
There's justification for doing it. We seem to be overlooking that point, especially when we have, say, Russia continues to violate agreements because they have a good relationship with the president or something like that. So now, if Russia does take over the Eastern Bloc, Russia, Korea, and this is just about Russia, Korea, China, guess what they're going to do? Take out next superpower. Who is that?
Well,
They put money in Ukraine.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I would say it reminds me a lot of the issue with Palestine and Israel. It's like, well, it depends on your starting point. We know very well what it feels like in this country to not want to have someone on your doorstep aiming nuclear weapons at you because we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so, of course, there is some justification for Russia to say, well, look, we're not interested in having NATO on our border either, and you've expanded NATO into, I believe it's either 17 or 19 additional countries since the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. I'm not making a case that we shouldn't help them. I'm just saying I think the discussion and the understanding of what's going on there has kind of been lost in this idea that, somehow Vladimir Putin, with a country that has approximately the same economic power as the economy of Texas or of Italy, is somehow in taking over parts of Ukraine, which there are other justifications there. I'm not saying that I agree with those 100%, but there are many Russians that live over the border in Ukraine, and they were being terrorized and harassed there too. So again, I'm not saying that's a justification for him to invade, but there's more to it. I think it's oversimplification to suppose that if we don't send all this money there, then we're going to be stuck with another Soviet Union. I don't think that's the whole story. I don't think that's realistic, and I could be wrong. I'm just giving you my opinion on it.
That's the thing. Both of us give an opinion. But
Yeah.
logically, if Russia takes this, and this, you said they have the economy of Texas, well, you take all these other countries, what will the economy look like then? You're talking about superpowers, and then you're talking about, in my perception, Russia, China, Korea. And you put them together, and we're already making enemies in the world. Now we got three superpowers that are aiming things at us. I mean, just logically looking at it, those are the things that keep me up at night.
Well, it's also true that we pushed Russia into the arms of China, which is 1,000 times the threat to us that Russia ever could be. And by taking the position that we took, and by going in I know this is a kind of off on a tangent here, but there was no reason to do that. I think we could have negotiated some kind of settlement with them, but we were very cocky about it. And we said, no, we're not going to deal with you. If you go in there, I think the last president said, well, it depends on how much land you try to grab. Maybe we'll do something, maybe we won't. A little wishy-washy with that. That unsteadiness probably brought some of that on, not to put it on an administration solely. But I guess I would just say this. I would rather spend that money here. I would rather spend a chunk of that in the south of Fort Worth, up in the Appalachian region, and other areas of the country where we could use it. Could we send some? Are there some things we could do? Yes, but it's very troubling to me that for 4 years, we were not even at the negotiating table. It was, our way or the highway. We're going to send missiles and money and bombs and all kinds of things there, and it's war to the knife. And we weren't even negotiating. Now, even during the Gulf War, we had negotiations going on with Iraq to try and say, look, let's bring an end to this. It's always the case. It was very troubling to me that we weren't even working on that. So just to conclude that, I would rather spend the money here first.
Tim, it's 3:20.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed our conversation.
It's always a
Josh,
pleasure.
you had your hand up. You can see us down here and talk to us. We'll stay around for a few minutes, I'm sure. We got to let them go, though, I think,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
might have
of course.
other
Thank
class.
you. Thank you for
you
your time.
all
Thank you for coming.
being here today. We enjoyed it. We'll do this again.
Thank you for the thoughtful questions, too, by the way.